I'm Dean Meminger. Here's your Spectrum News in 90. Much of the world faced online chaos Friday as a widespread technology outage impacted companies and services across multiple industries. At the heart of the massive disruption is CrowdStrike, a cybersecurity firm that says a problem occurred when it deployed a faulty update to computers running Microsoft Windows. The incident grounded flights and left banking and hospital systems offline.
It's just ridiculous, actually. It's unbelievable.
It's just terrible. People spend thousands of dollars to go on vacation, and this is the situation that we get put through.
Questions and concerns continue to surround President Biden's re-election campaign amid growing Democratic calls to end his 2024 bid. CNN reports many top White House officials privately believe he must abandon his campaign for a second term and do it soon. Despite the pressure, President Biden says he will return to the campaign trail next week. New details coming to light about the alleged gunman who opened fire at Donald Trump's rally. Authorities say the 20-year-old research school shooter before carrying out the attack. Investigators say minutes before the attempted assassination, he took a screenshot of the Pennsylvania rally. Those are your headlines. Now, your weather on the ones.
Hey everybody, I'm meteorologist Nate Harrington. A lot going on across the lower 48 as we close out the week. Lots of heat building in the west as high pressure controls that. And then lots of areas of heavy rainfall as a frontal boundary sits across the deep south and the Carolinas. Excessive rainfall and monsoonal rains and thunderstorms in the Midwest and the Four Corners region. All of that continues through the weekend. A very consistent pattern for us. Heat builds even more for folks in the Pacific Northwest and more rainfall. We'll talk more about it in your forecast coming up.
Welcome to The Big Deal. I'm Errol Lewis, national political anchor at Spectrum News. Every week we look at some of the biggest issues shaping our nation and the road to the White House. The 2024 Republican National Convention wrapped up this week with Donald Trump accepting the party's nomination for president just days after surviving an assassination attempt. The former president also unveiled his vice presidential running mate, Senator J.D. Vance. We'll talk more about him later in tonight's show. And as Republicans united in Milwaukee, President Biden's campaign schedule was abruptly put on pause after he tested positive for COVID. The president now faces growing calls to withdraw from the Democratic ticket. Spectrum News national political reporter Angie Gonzalez starts us off with a recap of the final night of the RNC.
Former President Donald Trump accepted the Republican Party's nomination for the third time Thursday night amid cheers from his supporters and following a special performance by Kid Rock.
Say Trump, Trump, Trump.
The celebration took a more somber tone as Trump opened his 90-minute speech by recounting the shooting that wounded him during a rally in Pennsylvania.
There was blood pouring everywhere, and yet, in a certain way, I felt very safe because I had God on my side. I felt that.
Later honoring the life of Corey Comparatori, the husband, father, and former fire chief who died at Trump's campaign event. Trump also spoke about the need for unity, only mentioning President Joe Biden's name once.
Despite such a heinous attack, we unite this evening more determined than ever.
But a major portion of his speech touched on many of the divisive issues and talking points central to the 2020 election. He also repeated a false claim that Attorney General Merrick Garland has aggressively denied.
The Democrat Party should immediately stop weaponizing the justice system and labeling their political opponent as an enemy of democracy.
Following his speech, Trump was surrounded by his wife and family. Now Trump and his vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance, will appear together this weekend during an event indoors in the battleground state of Michigan. During previous elections, the focus would now shift to the Democratic National Convention in Chicago next month. But with calls for Biden to step aside continuing and word that he may drop out sometime soon, anything could happen in the next 4 weeks. In Milwaukee, Angie Gonzalez, Spectrum News.
Joining me now to talk more about all of this are two of the top political journalists in America. They've been covering the convention all week. 9 in Tampa, Florida. And Jason Fechner is an anchor for Spectrum News 1 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Jason, let me start with you, my friend. The momentum is high right now within the Republican Party. There was all that talk about a changed Trump after the assassination attempt, but as that speech went on, we heard a lot of the same things that we're used to hearing from Trump, right?
Well, definitely a different tone to begin the speech, very subdued, and Trump was very subdued mainly throughout the course of the RNC here in Milwaukee over the past few days. But as you mentioned there, it kind of then went back into a traditional rally speech. And after everything that he had gone through following the horrific assassination attempt, everyone was kind of curious to see what his tone would be and whether or not he would basically talk about unity a lot throughout the course of Thursday night's speech. As I mentioned, though, on Thursday night, what he had to say, though, traditionally doesn't necessarily matter come November. This is a very different politics, of course, in the wake of that assassination attempt, especially, but with everything that the Democrats are going through right now. So did he pick up a lot of votes? Possibly. Did he pick up a lot of independent votes? Probably a wash when it comes to that. And I think when it comes down to it, his speech probably won't have a huge influence on November. He's in the lead right now. Momentum is definitely in his favor. And I think those are the wins at his back, if you will, not necessarily what he had to say there on the speech Thursday night.
And Holly, there was a lot of just raw news there. Trump went into the details when he recounted the assassination attempt, the details we had never really heard publicly before. Where do things stand with the investigation into that attack?
What you have here, Errol, is multiple failures and now multiple investigations. Here's what we know so far. 1 hour before that shooting in Butler, Pennsylvania, the Secret Service had locked on to this would-be assassin. They had labeled him as suspicious in a backpack, so they were watching him. And then just 10 minutes before the shooting, they elevated that to a direct threat on the president, but somehow still let Trump come out onto the stage. We know that that shot came from just 150 yards away from the rooftop that somehow was not covered. There was not an agent on there. And that is going to be one of the questions for sure that are going to be asked of Kim Cheadle, the Secret Service director. She confirmed today that she is going to appear before Congress on Monday. You can expect that to get very heated. I mean, we already saw lawmakers chasing her down through the halls of the RNC trying to get answers to these questions. So that'll start us off on Monday. And then on Tuesday, the local police will answer questions of lawmakers. And then on Wednesday, it's going to be the FBI Director Christopher Wray's turn to get up and brief lawmakers on what he knows. And as far as this shooter, 20-year-old Thomas Crooks, just not much is known about him. Doesn't have much esto. What on earth was going on with this guy? What was his motivation? Did he have any help? We don't have those answers just yet. But for such an amateurish failure here, the investigation is going to get intense. That's really going to ramp up on Monday with Cheadle's testimony.
Okay, a lot of accountability coming up. And Jason, the economy and crime were two major parts of Donald Trump's acceptance speech. He continued to boast about having the best economy in the world and the lowest crime rates when he was president. Now, you did a fact check of that. It turns out that those claims need to be questioned.
First off, unemployment, of course, a lot of metrics go into it when we talk about the economy specifically. On the unemployment front specifically, it did fall to the lowest level in 5 decades, but under President Biden, that has fallen lower than that substantially throughout the course of his presidency. Wages were up. They had been up under Obama, but nowhere near where they had been in the 60s as well. On the inflation front, though, that's what a lot of people are Trump presidency, global inflation issues impacting Biden going forward. And when it comes to crime rate, violent crime definitely lower under Biden than it was under Trump. Property crime, though, is up. A lot of discrepancies about the data that both candidates are using going forward. It's kind of a beauty in the eye of the beholder situation.
Okay, and then Holly, real quick, I mean, to the extent that conventions are about creating unity, it was notable that former rivals of Donald Trump, Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis in particular, all kind of bent the knee. Is that unity message going to last beyond the convention?
You know, it certainly is, because there is so much unity in this Republican Party. I mean, look at 2016, and they are openly fighting with Trump. This is a party that has now been remade in his image. They are united behind him, particularly to hear Nikki Haley say, you don't have to agree with him 100% of the time, but look at the alternative. That is what you want as a party going into the home stretch of an election, the momentum, the enthusiasm, the party united. Trump has that. I believe he did miss an opportunity on that speech, though. I think a lot of people who tuned in to listen, the first 20 minutes riveting, hearing what he went through in Pennsylvania. The rest of it, for people who are on the fence, they probably heard it and they're like, oh yeah, I remember this guy, and that's why I don't like him. But Democrats here have a very short window to get it together, and if they can't, this is Trump's election to lose.
Okay, thank you, Holly. Thank you, Jason. Great working with you this week. We're going to take a break now, and when we come back, we'll shift our focus to the Biden-Harris campaign as President Biden faces growing political pressure within his Democratic Party. Stay with us.
Spectrum News Plus. News from a new perspective, dedicated to refreshing storytelling and empowering communities across the nation. With balanced reporting, providing real context and in-depth coverage 24 hours a day.
Here's a look at your forecast across the country.
Local stories, connecting communities. We are Spectrum News Plus. Streaming now on the Spectrum News app and free with your Spectrum subscription.
At Spectrum, we know that internet is a vital tool to help you fulfill your dreams.
My dream is to become a video game developer.
My dream is to get my online college degree. That's why Spectrum has affordable solutions to keep you connected. At Spectrum, we are committed to delivering reliable, affordable internet and unlimited mobile to keep you connected.
When I never graduated from high school, I realized I wanted to go back to school because I didn't want to work these back-breaking jobs the rest of my life. With the help of my father and having my son, that was all the motivation that I needed to come back to school. I felt accomplished, made me feel that I could take on whatever challenges life throws at you.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but...
Welcome back to The Big Deal. As we mentioned earlier, President Joe Biden had to pause campaigning this week as he isolates in Delaware, recovering from COVID. This comes as Democrats remain divided over the future of his re-election bid, with more lawmakers calling on Biden to bow out of the race. But one top Democrat, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, on Friday backed the Biden-Harris ticket.
President Biden, as I've said repeatedly, is our nominee. He has a tremendous track record of success. He's one of the most accomplished American presidents in our history. And he has the vision, I believe, the ability, the capacity, and the track record to make a case to being successful in November.
Spectrum News political reporter Kevin Fry joins me with more from Washington, D.C. And Kevin, there's been a lot of reporting from anonymous sources about the future of Biden's campaign. But then putting all of that aside, the president himself released a statement saying that he's looking forward to hitting the campaign trail next week. We are only a month away from the Democratic National Convention. Is he trying to squash all of this speculation?
I mean, he's been trying to squash the speculation for weeks now with various letters to Capitol Hill, with statements from his campaign, with his own personal statements publicly, and the speculation continues. Part of it is that you seem to get this sense, particularly from some Democratic leaders, Speaker Nancy Pelosi, for example, former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, where they seem to be basically saying, yes, Biden has made a decision, but it's not the decision we necessarily want him to make, and thus we hope he makes another decision. There's reporting from AB that Congressman Hakeem Jeffries behind the scenes during meetings with Biden were basically suggesting you need to step aside, citing concerns about the impact on down ballot races, especially the House, which Jeffries wants to flip come this fall.
And Kevin, a lot of this pressure on Biden is coming from House Democrats who are in swing districts, who fear that Biden's unpopularity might drag down their own reelection chances. But what does it say that the House Minority Leader, the head of the Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries, is strongly behind Biden?
Right. I mean, there's a couple of things to pull apart here. One, it's worth noting that he is certainly in some of his public commentary leaving the door open to the potential for a different ticket. When we caught up with him today in Brooklyn, he said, quote, "We have a ticket right now." You can basically run a train through the hole that leaves in the event that there is a new top of the ticket pairing. But at the same time, for Jeffries, this is the ticket that exists to galvanize the whole party around those people, if indeed it is a Biden-Harris ticket that makes it the whole way to November. So he's also thinking about kind of keeping the party in a cohesive unit. One also could speculate that part of this is that because we've seen these private meetings, these private leaks, that this is all about trying to basically hold back and let Biden feel that he's making this decision on his own, should he indeed pull the trigger and announce that he is actually going to step aside.
Okay, thanks very much, Kevin. We are not done just yet. Coming up next, we'll take a closer look at the Republican vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance. Stay with us. Here's the deal. In this election year, people need a place to explore national issues that have an impact on their community. To understand those issues better, we're bringing together our team of local political journalists from across the country to break down what's happening. So join us every week to catch up on the key stories making a big difference across the nation and in your local community.
Watch The Big Deal with Errol Lewis Friday nights at 9 Eastern, 8 Central on Spectrum News Plus. Available on all of your favorite devices exclusively on Spectrum.
Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back.
Dad!
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
President Trump represents America's last best hope to restore what, if lost, may never be found again. A country where a working-class boy born far from the halls of power can stand on this stage as the next vice president of the United States of America.
We're back with The Big Deal. I'm Errol Lewis. That was Ohio Senator J.D. Vance formally accepting the Republican nomination for vice president at the Republican National Convention. Spectrum News political reporter Harry Lee has more on Vance's rise in this report.
J.D. Vance rode his Rust Belt roots to fame about growing up in Appalachia. He did not vote for Donald Trump that year, arguing the builder-turned-reality show star did not represent white working-class voters.
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
8 years later, a complete reversal.
Look, I was wrong about Donald Trump. I didn't think he was going to be a good president, Brett. He was a great president, and it's one of the reasons why I'm working so hard to make sure he gets a second term.
Vance's political transformation began when Donald Trump Jr. read Hillbilly Elegy and befriended Vance, whose opinion of Donald Trump shifted by the time the two first met in 2021.
We need people in Washington, D.C. who knows how the system works, who knows how to reform that system, and who can make this country better. And that's why I'm running to be your next U.S. Senator for the state of Ohio.
When Vance, a Yale law graduate and venture capitalist, ran for Senate the next year, Trump endorsed him, acknowledging that, quote, like some other great things about me in the past, but he gets it now, and I have seen that in spades. Trump's blessings boosted Vance from just one Republican candidate among 5 to the Senate.
I think the president's endorsement is hugely helpful. I think so many people forget that President Trump actually delivered on his promises, which is why Ohio Republican voters trust him so much.
Vance's positions on some issues have changed substantially to align with Trump. Vance previously criticized Trump for targeting immigrants. Now he often echoes Trumpian rhetoric.
We don't want to buy more plane tickets to fly illegal immigrants into the 48 continental United States.
As the 2024 race kicked into gear, Vance became increasingly visible, campaigning with Trump, attending his New York City court trial, and appearing on national TV news shows that Trump is known to watch. Though Trump has helped Vance enormously, Vance could help Trump too. He articulates Trump's vision and provides relatability, while Trump touts himself as a billionaire's humble beginnings. In Washington, Harry Lee, Spectrum News.
Spectrum News national political reporter Taylor Popolars has been on the ground in Milwaukee, Wisconsin all week. He joins me now with more on Donald Trump's running mate. And Taylor, before you were on the national desk, you spent years covering Ohio politics, so you actually know J.D. Vance quite well. Why did Donald Trump pick him? This is somebody who was once a very vocal critic of Trump and even compared him to Hitler at one point.
Yeah, it's a pretty kind of stunning revelation to just look back at what J.D. Vance was saying just a few years ago and now looking at him on the stage at the RNC with Donald Trump and wanting to be in his next administration if they're successful in November. I think there's kind of two reasons that Trump ultimately chose him. One is that the Trump family, we spoke with Eric Trump earlier this week, they've told us that Vance and the former president have a close friendly as they've interacted, especially over the last year. You know, once Vance entered the Senate about 18 months ago, he became one of, if not the most vocal Trump supporters in the Senate and was regularly appearing on cable news programs that the former president liked watching and was willing to deliver floor speeches on topics that really kind of, appealed to Trump. So there's that aspect of it. There's also the fact that, while Trump wants to serve another 4 years in office, he's nearing 80 years old, and there's not really been an heir apparent to Trumpism, and Vance isn't even yet 40. He turns 40 next month, and so I think Trump views him as kind of somebody who he could pass the torch to if he stays loyal and if he stays in Trump's good graces. But we have to look at the former Vice President Mike Pence as an example of how things could crumble if things were to change moving forward.
Well, yeah, I mean, in a broader sense, as you mentioned, I mean, he's only 39 years old. He's only been in the Senate for a year and a half. If he's the future of the Republican Party, do we know what that future will actually mean?
I think over the last decade, we've gotten a pretty clear indication of kind of what Trumpism is looking like and how it's shaped the Republican Party. And what I could say is that the Biden campaign's criticisms of J.D. Vance are fairly accurate when they say he's kind of a miniature clone of Trump. Vance has really aligned himself politically and policy-wise with the Trump campaign and the Trump agenda over the last couple of years. Vance kind of underwent a transformation when he launched his Senate bid back in July 2021 after being that Trump critic for several years. He completely did a 180 and he tried to align himself with Donald Trump in every possible way. And so in that sense, Vance does seem fully aligned. And if he's able to win this fall with Trump on the ticket, and then Vance automatically becomes the front runner for the GOP presidential nomination 4 years from then, it does show that if the policy agenda stays what it's been for the last few years, that Vance will just kind of continue on as we've seen. We'll see lots of talk about rebuilding industrial communities in the Midwest that have really been hurt by global trade deals, and lots of talk about kind of insults and going on the attack and kind of being an attack dog.
Okay, so now Vance is taking that approach to the campaign trail with a joint rally with Donald Trump in Michigan on Saturday, followed by a scheduled rally in his hometown of Middletown, Ohio. That's on Monday. It seems like a pretty direct attempt to win over voters in the Rust Belt.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And multiple Trump campaign officials have told me and told our colleagues that another key reason that Vance was chosen is because the Trump campaign knows they have to perform well in places like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and here in Wisconsin. Those are three of the arguably the closest battleground states that have proven to be kind of consequential in the last few presidential elections, that Donald Trump fared pretty well in 2016, but where he lost ground in 2020 at home. So he doesn't really have a hometown connection to the Midwest. And so the Trump team really is hoping that Vance will spend most of his time in those three key states. And because Ohio is a neighbor to all of them, they hope that his story that he wrote about in Hillbilly Elegy and the fact that he's represented Ohio in the Senate for the last year and a half will really help connect with voters. The big question, I think, though, is will Vance be appealing to any of the moderates and any of the more independent voters who maybe supported Trump in 2016, but then were frustrated with him in 2020? Because Vance is so aligned with Trump, I don't know how much daylight there will be between them and how much that will bring kind of new voters into the pool, but it'll be fascinating to watch Vance on the trail, especially in his first few events.
An exciting new phase of the campaign. Thanks very much, Taylor. And we thank you at home for joining us for The Big Deal. We'll see you next week. Stay tuned to your local station.
At Spectrum News, we're committed to strengthening the fabric of local communities through our reporting, with stories that inspire and news that matters. Streaming live on your smart TV and connected devices, plus on-demand weather forecasts. It's all there as you step outside with the Spectrum News mobile app. Spectrum News Plus, local stories connecting communities. Exclusively for Spectrum customers. Now available on your favorite devices.
At Spectrum, our workforce of over 100,000 employees are all located right here in the U.S. You can find them in our stores, in the field, and in our call centers with 100% U.S.-based customer service. Our team works hard to provide the towns, cities, and neighborhoods they live in with the reliable services that everyone counts on, making us one of America's most trusted companies. We're Spectrum, creating jobs and opportunities across the country, and proud to be 100% U.S.-based.
Today I'm going to talk to you about physics. Come on in, girls. Let's go. This is the first rocket to get humans to Mars.
Really tall.
I'm a rocket structural engineer designing and building parts that will be stepping foot on Mars. Do I have a group of astronauts on my hands?
Yes.
You can become a rocket scientist or whatever else you want to be.
That's why I'm never gonna let you go. Never gonna let you go. Babe, I'm never gonna let you go. No, no, never gonna let you go.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Never gonna let you go.